We are joined by Honorable Seth Terkper, former finance minister, a man who has done that work before. Maybe what he faced. Okay, so I think I shouldn't say this. Maybe I should ask you. Good morning.
Good morning. You know a lot, so you can say.
Yes.
Good morning to your listeners, viewers. I'm sure you're also on Facebook and earlier.
Yes. We are on Facebook this morning. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Nice to have you in the studio. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I was going to make
been a while.
Yes, it's been quite a while.
I've been away. So.
Yes. But you were still actively, when you had the opportunity, you were still tweeting on the Ghanaian economy.
Yes.
Anytime there were matters that were being discussed. One of the things you've tweeted on constantly is our road to the IMF.
Yes.
And the kind of conversations that the government keeps bringing up. And I realized from your tweets that you have always held, and I've spoken to you a couple of times on this, a strong opinion on whether or not we can just wake up in the morning and say this is due to COVID and Russia, Ukraine. Absolutely. And that was it. Absolutely. In fact, you keep saying you cannot discount those two, but those are not really the only issues that have led us here. So which other things do you think we should be paying attention to, even though government insists those are the two main issues? Which other weightier matters to you should government be talking about when it comes to how we landed here?
What did they do with the 3 oil fields? Most of what we did was 1 oil field. So there should be some accountability. Okay. Because on average it was 70,000 barrels per day.
Okay.
I mean, before the recent dips and whatever, it shot up to about 190,000 barrels a day, almost 3 times. So a minimum of accountability is important. If with 1 oil field we were able to set up a stabilization fund, the infrastructure fund seed capital was, a loan that we took. It was part of the 2014 bond.
Okay.
To set up the infrastructure fund seed capital. So we didn't put everything in the budget for consumption because we knew, its importance. What happened to the sinking fund? What happened to ESLA?
Okay.
Today we're talking about, President Mano was talking about the banking sector, right? And if you look at most of the government statements, they claim to have spent, sometimes they say 14 billion, sometimes 21 billion. ESLA has brought in 33 billion. And I'm saying ESLA because it includes the 100th road levy, okay, the energy, levy, the substantive one. They were targeted at, at debt. And what we did, you remember, was to bring the banks, who the contractors owe, who VRA owe, and whatever. And we used the ESLA to settle and restructure some of it. So what happened? ESLA is supposed to bring in, 60-something billion. It's brought in so far something close to 30 billion.
Okay.
So what happened to that money? Why do you keep talking about? Why haven't we paid depositors? And when you collateralize the ESLA, what did you do with it? With the money? Such that today, that same ESLA collateralized bond has become part of the debt exchange. What do you do with the GET fund, loan, Dachi? Such that today it has become part of the debt exchange, domestic debt exchange. It's because it's for government, so it's not being highlighted as, we. So there's a lot, that, has, a lot of water has passed under the bridge. Okay. But if you look at, as I keep saying, the 2019 Article 4, in that Article 4 statement, let me point to just 2 things. The IMF adjusted our deficits. From putting the bailouts and things which were being, what I've spoken about, as footnotes and the rest, they used it to adjust. Okay. And our deficit of what was it? Was 3.9 or something was adjusted to 7%. The 5.9 was adjusted to 7.2. Okay. We were doing the budget. That was wake-up call. And here we continue telling Ghanaians and repeating the old numbers. Likewise, the debt, figure was adjusted. The ratings agency adjusted as well. Major institutions adjusted. The IMF itself, adjusted. World Bank, everybody adjusted. Our government adamantly continued to, preach to the old numbers, and we are where we are today.
Okay.
Then that same 2019 Article 4 showed the deficit, a gap, of about with the budget.
Okay.
I think it's between 3 to 5%. And then 2020 comes, and in the COVID report, the gap was disclosed. So if the gap existed, 2019, 2020, and it's in the COVID report, how do you blame, COVID for that gap?
Okay.
But fast forward, even if it was COVID, how do we account for the $6 billion US? I'm talking dollars that flowed into the economy to correct the effects of COVID. we can mention some of them. Bank of Ghana, 1.7 billion equivalent US dollars. That's what the 10 billion Ghana cedis meant at the time.
Okay.
IMF COVID loan, 1 billion. That's 2.7 billion. World SDR came in later, another 1 billion. So that's what 3.7.
Okay.
You can take African Development Bank and the rest. Let's say approximately 1 to 250 million, which could be more, and that gives you, 4 billion straight, right? And then you come in with the World Bank and others close to 1 billion. They've been mentioning the figures, right? Yes, that's 5 billion, right? Our own stabilization fund, PPEs and things which China and others gave us. No government with past global financial crisis, bushfires, droughts, everything, ever got 1 billion from the IMF. Maybe plus World Bank, like 350 billion, so you can say that's a package. No government has ever had 1/3 of what flowed to this government for correcting the economy. Why are we where we are now? I did not mention ESLA. I mentioned ESLA earlier because we are still in depositors. If ESLA was able, we were able to use it to settle VRA debts and restructure, right? And we're on course. In fact, there was 600 million term sheet based on ESLA, which was to settle the IPP debts. You can Google. I've Googled it on my Twitter handle, and which was admitted in Washington in April 2017, that this money was available to pay the needs of that debt. Why are we where we are today? And if all those things had been paid, if the loans for contractors had been paid to the banks through ESLA, if the energy sector debt had been paid to the banks that own, both local and foreign, as we were going to do, we wouldn't have the banking sector crisis that we had. Because remember, the non-performing loans had a public element due to Dumso and others, which is why we did ESLA, and then it had a private element. So at least if you had settled the public element, with ESLA, as was planned, which is the subsidies that were not paid and all that, the price stabilization, levy, we should have, cushioned, with which we set up the strategic stock, and the rest. Right? That's what President Mama is saying. You wouldn't have had this banking crisis because the non-performing loans would have gone down. That is not to excuse any more officers or anything, no. Because remember, we did the asset quality review that was used to bring the banks down. Right? So that's the point we are making.
A few things I noticed from that. You asked about 3 oil fields, you asked about ESLA, and then you went into even COVID, the amount of money that came to them. It seems your point is to say that if those monies were spent wisely, or were spent where they were supposed to have been spent, we wouldn't be in this crisis.
No, we wouldn't. I can say that for sure. No, we wouldn't. And if we are not stopped the sinking fund, remember we used 550 million of sinking fund money to pay off the Kufuor bond. We paid 336, take it to approximately 350. The government took the 200 million and paid it off October 4th, 2017. Used that money to pay off the Kufuor bond. So how come we did not continue? After it's new money to the budget, that's the logic of the PRME. And then remember, the sinking fund we established was from the stabilization fund when you cap it. And this 515 million was from 3 oil fields. Right? That's the sinking fund aspect. So can you imagine if with 3 oil fields we had continued? We would have continued taking off just like one government took over. And we had a schedule that shows that it could be done up to 70% with 1 oil field. And with 2 oil fields, maybe more. Taking off, that's a percentage of bonds that, would have been taken off. Right? But we collapsed the whole structure. Again, if with oil field, why things were good. Remember, even if you say 2019, things went sour in 2020. Well, 2017, 2018, 2019, taking over Sankofa. Why didn't we, close the cap for the stabilization fund so that we could build more money, we could build more funds into it? When COVID came, we took 250 million. In fact, it's now about 400 million because the cap has not been, removed. So we continue to deplete the stabilization fund. So let me grant it that with 1 oil field, if we did 250, if you continue to do 250, let me not multiply, continuously with 3 oil fields, just 250 each. You would have had 750 million. That's how you win yourself off the IMF and others with your own ability to, and let's not say that these things are not possible, because haven't you read in the news, that Rwanda has been able to pay its bond when they went to the board, 400 million. They don't have oil, they don't have gold, they don't have whatever. It's discipline. I used to have this conversation with their then finance minister. This conversation I knew very well. The one after Kaberuka, not, yes. About the structures we're putting in place and everything. Okay. Botswana is doing the same thing. So why couldn't we have continued? So I don't. So that is, I'm giving reasons why what President Mahama said, is justified. Yeah.
And is there also a matter of disagreement as to how to run this economy? Because when I listen to you, in not so many ways, you're talking about monies that come to you, the buffers that you create, in case things turn south. You are also talking about the kind of expenditures you are making and how you are using this money. You're saying there's a lot more money came to you. You didn't create the buffers. You didn't pay down debt. Yeah, you didn't create buffers. You stopped them. You didn't increase the infrastructure fund, which should have been in the market today, borrowing for commercial projects. That's the whole idea. So that the self-financing we started. Terminal 3 being paid from the airport tax, or the port expansion being paid from the forex. I sat with the chairman, including our former chairman who was, the in chair of, the Ports and Harbours Authority. And we went through and we said, you have to surrender, this money because you're supposed to borrow on your own balance sheet. Right? And they agreed. That's how so we never issued a sovereign guarantee for those 2 projects. I don't know if the structure is still in place. And that's how come we're able to do infrastructure and still reduce the rate of borrowing. Yeah. I'm wondering what the job of a finance minister is under the circumstances. Okay, so first, you said the period when they took over, they had no serious challenges at the time. All prices had rebound. There were no problems with commodity prices. Yes, output had increased too. Yes. And then
we had left the buffers.
Yes, the economy has started responding to some of the things that were being done, and so things looked good from that end. A finance minister at that time, when you take over, what do you do?
Well, I mean, you can pose a question to what they did. It should be about a record. It shouldn't be about more promises.
Thank you.
As a president, that's why he said he spent about half. And I'm glad that he did, to take Ghanaians' story. He has been saying it, but now he had a platform. So these are things we do. They can check. We can check what I'm talking about. By the way, our deficit wasn't 8.5. It was 10.3 on an old basis. our deficit was 6.1. And in fact, if you exclude the positive discrepancy, it's 5.8. So take it to be 6.1. I don't think it's been bettered. Our deficit at 2016, which we're bringing down from about 11, percent or so. Right? And then, what you see the rationale for some of these things. You remember we had HIPIC. So it's a wake-up call. And you had become a middle-income country. So it's a wake-up call. That nobody will forgive your debt any longer. At the minimum, you are a middle-income country. And you wasted, the opportunity for HIPIC because, it was just rising. So we have to do something, which is why we created a sinking fund in order that, which is in the Constitution, by the way.
But you did all that whilst in crisis.
Yes, because it's management. Because you had to do, as they say, the needful. You had to do the needful, so that you can lay the grounds, for a better recovery. And to be able to go into the capital markets confidently. Because once you start paying down, because you realize the highest we did was 10.2, and then the rate started going down by the time we did a 2016 bond.
Okay.
So we're laying the grounds, which is what? The sad thing is that if it is not sustained, then it becomes difficult for subsequent governments. But God will. But let me mention that, when we talk about the PRMA and its structures and whatever, the current administration opposition had a hand in it. You remember it took 1.5 years to debate that bill. Yes, I remember very well, from Honorable, Koto Sai to Honorable Chairman Sabunsu and others. Yeah, they had a hand in it. So we shouldn't think that, they were ignorant. Yeah.
So there was an agreement at Parliament at that level. These funds had to be created. They knew exactly the reasons for which.
Because we debated clause by clause. And the stickiest point was, what do you do? With the buffers that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because it was based on Trinidad and Tobago, it was based on Norway, it was with the oil-producing countries that had done things well. In fact, Nigeria made a contribution. For us to make some of the mistakes. Remember when they were also doing well, our teachers, everybody was going to Nigeria. Until we stabilize the economy and the exodus, reverse, right? So these are well informed. So yes, I'm not going to say that they did not. And in fact, parts of the structures that we are talking about, theoretically, some of it knew them because of the work we were doing elsewhere. But the framework, was there from the Kufuor administration. Yeah. The framework was there from the Kufuor administration. And in fact, the gentleman, Dr. Tufo, who became, one of my technical advisors and, who led I was a political side, but who went around, even was involved in some accidents and things at various points in time. Yeah. He served in the current administration. And he was serving in the Kufuor as advisor administration. Just like Dr. Sam Mensah and the rest who we kept on, Mangwa and others, who were, yeah. It didn't matter, what, because they were technocrats. Yeah, so these are, and they were in a handing over notes. Right, we didn't take anything out.
In a handing over notes. So what you anticipated was that you have, with the 3 additional oil fields, you expected prices to rebound. There was a lot more money. So a lot more money should be available to go into stabilization funds, sinking funds, so that you can be able to pay off the debt, the old debts, the new ones you're taking. Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund should be able to help you secure money for commercial infrastructure, among others.
Because Ghana Infrastructure Fund is supposed to invest in projects that have on a positive rate of return, which means that the project can pay for itself.
So you are saying Ghana Infrastructure Fund could have been used to do maybe the Tema motorway?
Absolutely. It's difficult to pay the full amount, from tolls only. Okay. But remember, if you manage the tolls, and we're going to do actually toll plazas. So if you manage the tolls, you see, paying 60%, right, and 40% resting on taxpayers, it's itself an achievement.
Okay.
Better than putting all the 100% on
the taxpayer.
Yeah.
If you improve toll collection and accounting for those tolls among others.
Precisely, which was going to be the philosophy for the electronic locks at KJTL. Now it's bent and all those. Yeah. So at least even if this was part of the tolls, where electronically collected and everything because electronic locks and, that's how you then go and issue municipal bonds, for KMA, AMA, the cities. They should be able to raise money on their own based on property tax, get fund and other, all these things were in the offing. So even if it's bought 40%, it's not 100% on the taxpayer. You reduce it 60%, and gradually they will be able to finance 100% commercial projects.
Instead of going for this calculated approach, sitting back in opposition, what have you seen your successor doing, actually?
The record is there. I don't have to I think the record is there for everybody to see. We're in a debt exchange, right? We are
spending without paying back
pensioners' monies, we are still facing, external creditors. I checked last night, Ghana is not listed for the board meeting. That's
yes. I was going to come to that because I think the IMF a bit.
No, yes, but yes. The IMF board, let's say is the highest, and let's say it's a law unto itself. I'm not ruling out that they can convene an emergency meeting on Ghana, which should be on their website once they do, because they are transparent. The fund is very transparent now. So we've been looking to see whether it will be listed. Yes, because what I know is that, what the managing director said was nuanced. He welcomed the fact that the committee chaired by France, and China, were going to prepare the grounds for going to the board. Right, and he had always been sympathetic, even to the extent, many people have even criticized her for her commentary. But that's a rule, that's a rule. It's not to make things worse for countries. The role of the fund is to work, with executive directors and big guys, so that countries get out of their situation. But I think it's more nuanced. But I don't rule out the fact that there could be an emergency meeting, which would be welcome, given the situation in which we are now. But I'm afraid that would be based on, and so the conclusion, if that happens, then concluding the debt exchange, assuming, and I doubt if it would be part of it, will become, maybe a first review condition for us to fulfill. Before the next tranche will be released.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they can release. It's possible they can do an emergency meeting, approve the first tranche, but the second tranche will have stiffer conditions.
Well, you see, you have to look at other factors. Let me give you one of it. So, why would Ghana jump Zambia, which has been marking time and doing that exchange for a while now? There should be some justification for it.
Okay.
They also have executive directors.
Okay. So
is it going to set a precedent? So we can just look at some of these and but the ultimate, as a Ghanaian, and knowing what it will do for the economy, and God willing, what we will take over, it's as well that we got the program, going. Yeah. Because it's taking too long.
Program is taking too long.
Yes.
What is happening currently? And I realized when they said they were doing an IMF program in record time. Did yours delay this long?
I remember we did a homegrown.
Okay.
And we actually wanted to do a policy support instrument.
Okay.
Which is that we wanted to, based on the PRMA structures and the things that we were putting in place, we wanted to actually see. PSI means that, yes, you invite a fund, you sit down, you have a discussion, and they'll come and do their reviews and everything, right, based on your record, which is the one we used to negotiate anyway, right? And then they would come and do a review. And it's only when things became critical, like when crude oil prices fell in 2015 to 2016, that you go for what you call a standby, some money.
Okay.
Right. So we're going to try things on our own. But then, the development partners and others, delay in releasing, the funds for the budget and all that, made it inevitable that we had to. So at the time we took the decision, it took 6 months.
It took 6 months?
Yes.
Between when you took the decision to when
yeah.
the
negotiations started and program, yes.
6 months?
Yes, approximately.
Because,
but that's because we wanted to include, it's not just as an austerity, but what we call the structural measures. We wanted to include the sinking fund and others as an element to prove to, the international community, the markets and the rest that we were going to be disciplined in this. And you had to explain all of those to the fund.
Okay.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's a shorter time than they are doing.
Yes, now it's a shorter. Yeah, now it's a shorter.
It's shorter than they are doing,
yes.
actually.
If you look at the fact that they started in earnest in October, announcement was I think somewhere was September. Yeah. Then we've gone past the 6 months because we are in May, or we are just in it. Yeah.
And that's the difference between what you did and what they are doing currently. You carried the program, insisted on the things you want to do. You had to convince them that these are the things that are necessary to be done in the economy.
No, it wasn't that one way. The fund most countries, because the fund has an IMF office here.
Okay.
And they collect data. They collect everything, So they know the situation.
Okay.
So they knew about things. They needed clarification on them. Mm-hmm. To give you an example, they knew about some of the things that the current vice president, my good friend, was saying all along. So you had to be clarifying those things. Yeah. Right. For example, one good example is, the fact that, the debt was higher, than what we were disclosing, which he was, saying at the time based on nominal and keeping the CD fixed, at the time the redenomination was made, right? And assuming that it was fixed throughout, the appeal, when in actual fact the CD started depreciation. Okay. So we had to explain all of those things, what if Fitch says something, whenever we are started doing so what is this thing about? And then even the sinking fund was discussed. Why wouldn't we use it to reduce the deficit? And we said, no, if you use it to reduce the deficit, what's in the deficit? Consumption. And our biggest headache is not having funds to do proper amortization. So part of it was actually, swept to reduce the deficit. But we said, no, we can't do this because it's in law. It's in the constitution. Okay. So if you want us to, then we have to go back to Parliament and it will delay. In the end, they understood why we wanted to do it. Because remember, our homegrown policy, much of the credit also goes to African Development Bank. So it wasn't like, it was done by novices only. Okay. In fact, their chief economist, Kabukula was then, in office, assigned their chief economist to come. So he was in town for 1 week of the 2 weeks. The second week, to join the team, to help us fashion it out. Because remember, the African Development Bank is like the World Bank. They are real sector. Mm-hmm. And then we were talking to the World Bank at the same time. Remember, we did the PRG, partial risk guarantee. Remember, by the time we entered the fund program, we had agreed on the 1 billion loan that we took for refinancing with the World Bank. And so once we were doing all of this, we had to. Remember, we had deferred, for 3 years, the payment of the arrears for single spine on our own following the whole, and intercredit conferences, all of which came, to be considered as century and all that. So you had to explain all of these things to them. Yeah.
So there was a whole discussion.
Yeah, yes, by the committee chaired by, Dr. Butchie.
It's interesting at this point that even what Dr. Bawumia said became a matter
of
scrutiny.
Yeah.
Before the IMF.
Well, of course, but the vice president had worked with the African Development Bank. He had worked at the central bank. So, who wouldn't listen to him? But we thought that some of the things were bit from where, and that's all. And then we challenged the basis. So you had to discuss all of these things.
You got a program, but I wanted to come back to what you're saying. You're saying that is how you win yourself off the IMF when you're talking about the sinking fund, the stabilization fund, and all the buffers we are putting in place.
I give an example of the stabilization fund. We left 250 million. Okay. As of now, we had withdrawn. If you look at PIAC reports, last I've not looked at the recent one, the previous one, we had withdrawn about 400 million from the stabilization fund. By not putting replacing the cap and increasing, the threshold, right? So I'm saying that, okay, take it that it took 250 million with one oil field, because the 400 includes additional oil fields. If you had increased it 750, at least 3 times 3, right? By the time COVID came, 750, right? You would have gone to the fund for 250, not 1 billion for COVID. Right? Or if you take it that you took, because of the stabilization fund 250, you took 1 billion, it means that without the stabilization fund, you could have taken 1.25 billion. And so it means that if you have more buffers, and if you listen carefully to the debt, part of the problem, the U.S. debate, right? The Republicans are saying that there was a COVID fund which they created for the next crisis, and the Republicans are saying let's use part of that to reduce. And the Democrats are saying it's inevitable, crisis will come, whether domestic or not. So we want to keep that buffer. That is a mighty U.S. which can borrow at any time. And in fact, they created a huge buffer of about 3 trillion. So you can Google Bloomberg. It said, the Fed's headache. The Treasury was holding that money. And that's how they were able to move more quickly under COVID than under the global financial crisis. In setting up research for financing private sector to do research in, the vaccine and whatever. Yeah, it was from those funds. Right, so we're saying that as a country which faces ups and downs in commodity prices, today we were hearing about, the dollar being weak. I think most of the radio stations are attributing the strength in the CD partially to the dollar, being weak relative to the CD and whatever. And that should tell you that when the dollar goes up, it strengthens, the CD will go down. And when the dollar is weak, gold prices go up. So when they go up, create a buffer, because when the gold prices will go down again. That's the logic of the stabilization fund. So if you are able to manage at least mild crisis, you wouldn't be running to the fund, anytime there is such a shock.
And
so you go to the fund for a serious one. The fund is like the buffer, central bank, the global fund, central bank for countries that do not have strong backing themselves, like the Western economies.
So instead of making sure those buffers are strengthened, what we've done since 2017
is to deplete them. The record is there.
Deplete them.
Yes,
and in addition to the new monies
that the projection over the 3-year period shows that they may not be restored unless we work harder, like we did.
Working hard means.
Well, looking at His Excellency was mentioning some of the issues, like not going to big new contracts unless they are properly financed, focusing on pipeline and all the things that he was listing.
Okay.
Yes.
So prioritizing.
Prioritizing, yes.
You had to do
but
that.
We were doing that anyway. Yes. At a point, we look at all the loans that were not disbursing, which were about to be cancelled, right? We took 2 measures, right? We compiled, projects which the World Bank had financed and the rest. When we did the 2015 bond, part of the 2015 and 2014 bonds, we used them to pay counterpart funds, because some of the loans say you contribute 25% because we can't pay your local costs and the rest. We'll give you so the loan is equivalent to 75%, sometimes 90%, so you contribute 10%. We were not, because of serious others, doing so and all, we were not able to pay all this. So we put part of the loan, you took part of the loan to pay off, our share of the counterpart funds, so that the funds, they're already on our debts, on our books. Yeah, so that we can release it. And part of that is what went into the e-schools. Yeah. You see, so those are some measures that His Excellency was talking about, because he was in command of the situation. In fact, it wasn't all my colleague ministers who were happy, that, they are done disbursing funds. If you have money, why don't you give it to me? Why are you taking it to education and all that, right? So it's not even an easy discussion in cabinet when you are taking such measures, right? So what he's saying is practically what he managed as president. Yes.
So you have to prioritize the areas where you spend.
You have to prioritize.
Put on hold some of the things that you really would like to do.
Precisely. At least defer them. Yeah, put them on hold.
But I was coming to what we've been doing since 2017. The suggestion is that instead of going with this approach of improving our buffers, ensuring we make more savings, with more money coming in, we decided to just take the monies, borrow more, spend everything. And
I said that we were getting
from
close,
the buffers.
We were getting close to the 6 billion, right? Remember, I didn't add the 2 billion. Remember, before we stopped going to the market, we had done a bond of 2 billion.
Yes.
So if we had that, that's about 8 billion flowing to the economy.
Yeah, that was in 2020.
Yes. So I'm talking about the period between 2020 and 2021. The last major flow was the SDR.
So, but the IMF thing, they've always accounted for 1 billion. You're saying they took a loan and then the SDR?
Yes. Much of which usually goes to Bank of Ghana, but for the first time, most of that, including and remember, they also took over the, our part of the ECF. Yeah, the program that we did. But for the first time, much of that went into budget support. So what was it that was aching the budget? And then we depleted Bank of Ghana reserves. We've depleted them completely, also to support the budget. All those 10 points, whatever billion loans which, BOG gave out, yeah, they was based on reserves. Even if it's the bank's own money, at least they did, were able to channel some of that into building big hospitals and the rest, yeah.
When you're in this kind of crisis situation and learning from what you did at the time, what happens to things like fertilizer for agriculture, making sure transportation is affordable? How do you calibrate all that?
The farmers are speaking for themselves. When you ask you about fertilizer, you cover the news. I listen to when you interview the farmers and the rest. They are talking, they are educating me on what's going on. So yes, fertilizer shortage. Look at the state of cocoa board now. Right? A contingent liability. That's a board that had built its borrowing capacity, where it was borrowing at LIBOR plus 2 or 3%, better than government. So they look at this state. How can it afford to get fertilizer for cocoa farmers and the rest? Look at pension funds and others. So that one, I'm also, so that I listen to you to get the news. Pensioners and the rest, picketing and all that, yes.
But I was asking about so ultimately the questions that arise is so what do you admit that COVID did? Because they sometimes will talk about
we
the
shouldn't
cost of
underestimate
fertilizer going up.
No, we shouldn't underestimate COVID at all. No, not the least. I'm not here to say that COVID, did not, have a big impact on the economy. Closing your borders, it's no joke, all right? Vaccine, at least it may not be the whole country, but the major cities, were on lockdown and others. Yes, unprecedented. It's affected. Yeah, it's affected the economy. I'm not denying that at all. No, I've never denied it. But I'm only saying that, one, we had the conditions for helping to resolve COVID in a more noble way based on the PRMA discussions about the justification for the stabilization fund based on the global financial crisis. Right? Which around that time we also had Ebola and all of those things. So you should know, that eventually there will be crisis. You can manage an economy continuously for 3 or 4 years without crisis, one crisis or the other. So what I'm saying is that, one, we lost that opportunity with 300 years to strengthen, the buffers. And I'm saying, two, there were more flows into the economy.
During that period?
During that period, to have helped us resolve the issue. So if we couldn't, it means that the problem was deeper, at a minimum. Right.
How,
So those are the points that I'm making. Yeah.
how critical was money to resolving this?
Of course, for vaccines.
Because they got the money.
Yeah, it was critical.
They got the money, but yet still, the crisis just
Yeah, but
worsened.
we saw the Wachi party and things that took place in 2020 elections. And so we know some of the story. We don't know all of it. As only the government that has to account. And it's in the 2020 Article 4. Anyway, the fund raised the 2020 in the 2020 Article 4. Yeah. The fund said that we didn't manage the COVID funds, well.
So everything comes down to the choices that has been made since 2017, even in the midst of crisis.
I would say so. So if you had all this money, I listened to your last segment. Before I came, I was listening on them. If you had all this money, what would 2 billion e-levy do for you? By the way, we have about 15 levies now on the books, including extra levies that were retained. COVID, sanitation, financial, whatever. I have the list somewhere. I think I tweeted it, so you can go and check. So we have about 15 levies, including the recent ones that were passed. So if levies were the solution, many existed before the e-levy, and we knew very well. And in any event, if you look at the projection that was done for the e-levy, expressed as a percentage of GDP, the amount was increasing. As a percentage of GDP, 1.4, 1.4, 1.4. So you just plug in 1.4. No oscillation. Yeah.
So more money is not. So what do we need actually? What do you think we need?
Well,
because the IMF is, if we are getting $600 million soon,
you need. Okay, let me mention 3 things. We did not think that we had a firm handle, present and past governments, on arrears which are in the form of contracts which will feed into the budget.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We only did an estimate when we were doing budget hearing.
Okay.
And it was basically built on what is the arrears you are holding now. The arrears you are holding now is work that has been finished on the road. Right? But there's a backlog. The road may be half done. They may just be beginning. You have school projects. You have all the real sector.
Okay.
They have all of this. So we started building what we call the contract database to capture that. Because remember, we do medium-term projections. So it means that if you have a contract which will be 2 years in coming, the essence of the contract database is that you cannot award further contracts beyond, that amount until the road project is finished. This is what was politicized in 2017. They said we left 7 billion. If you remember, they did an offset of 5 billion and carried forward the 2 billion. So that's one, because the budget overruns are caused by the fact that you don't know. We knew some of them by virtue of, just say if you take Bui Dam, because you know the disbursements and what the amounts and the rest. So they were not part of the budget. Okay. Now the current ones did not also feature very much, in the accountant general system. So GIFMIS comes in, you remember? So we're putting all of these things electronically into the system, so that you can begin to have a firm handle, because countries have done it. They were able to control their, not just the current year, the future year, pipeline of contract. That's the pipeline which President Mahama was talking about.
Okay.
And we had compiled all of that. In fact, there's a report now which shows that pipeline is about 77 billion. And only 23 billion or 24 billion has been paid, which means leaving about 50-something billion.
77 billion?
Yes, because it was continued. Because it was a system that we established, the Ministry of Finance, financed by the German and UK governments.
It's a contract database.
Yes, because
where all contracts finish, ongoing, are kept.
Yes, and it was to be part of the performance, review report. But so expenditure or something review report.
Okay.
which was put, on the website, which we saw. Right. So 77 billion.
77 billion.
Increase from 13 billion. At the time we're compiling it.
Okay.
So now so you can see. So if you have 77 billion, right, annually, is what GRA brings in. So if you spread it, if you assume that these contracts will be completed in 3 years, divide by 3, that's 1/3 of GRA is going to cover
contract.
Well, yes. And yesterday the provision we were making was around 1.5 to 2.something billion. So we're going to put what we call the accounts payable model in the gift mix so that we can use it to, to control. That's one of the, the big, headaches. If you ask me, right? Then I mentioned the other one already. I'm talking about fiscal discipline. The other one, where you were just borrowing and borrowing, and you were not repaying. You borrow T-bills, you roll over. Then you come to domestic bonds, you roll over. And then you go to the capital markets and you borrow and you are rolling over. It will catch up with you. That's the debt that has caught up with us. Our solution, the sinking fund, which started to work. It's not the only solution. Remember we spoke about self-financing projects and all those things, yes. And then strengthening, not taking street money, not taking GMPC money, not taking cocoa board money, try to manage the budget so that at least they can continue borrowing on their budget so that this contingency fund thing, contingency liabilities thing would, So we initiated, some of the what you call the structural measures. Those are the structural measures I was saying were in the homegrown policy. Yes. So these are some of the things which plague, which, we should, as developing countries, attend to, especially as middle-income countries, who will be losing concessional financing and grants. So these are some of the things that we're talking about.
77 billion in contracts alone. You're talking about a debt that is about 600 billion.
Yeah, actually 24 billion or 23 point something. Let's say 24 has been paid according to the record.
24 billion paid?
Yeah, paid, yes.
Okay.
So if you deduct.
You deduct it from the current, the last day last week.
Yes.
Okay. So having done that, so this is still significantly huge.
Yes, still huge, yes. That's the point I'm making. So that should inform you that the pace at which you are awarding contracts will get out of hand. And it will create problems in the future. So
you need to slow down first.
Yes.
Slow down the amount of contracts you award.
Yeah. No, focus on and complete. Because you're adding new ones. And then you are leaving the old ones. If you travel, there are roads, there are schools, which are uncompleted hospitals, the youth schools and the rest. That's why President Mama said, to quote him, it doesn't matter who awarded the contract, we'll focus on the pipeline.
Else you'll be in trouble. You're already in trouble.
I was going to say that we are in trouble already. So we took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, so there are a few things. Now, I've been listening to, I know you know Dr. Percy.
Yes.
Yeah, and let me also quote.
I don't think we've met, but I listen to it.
But I know, as of Pratt, you know very well.
Oh, he's my senior.
Okay, so the two of them.
Sometimes you disagree. I mean,
you disagree on the lot.
No, well, yes, but if you are friends, you don't have to expect all of them to agree with you philosophically and whatever. Yeah, we talk. I've known Senior Pratt for a very long time. Yeah, I know him for a very long time. So when we talk, I listen to him. Yeah.
They are suggesting that if you look the situation that we face now, it's not something you defer. You cannot say we'll deal with it tomorrow.
But we are deferring already, without due respect to them. When you say the pensioner should pause, he is not taking the decision. When you go to your bank and things are good for you at home, you will tell them to roll over. You know the word roll over. So now, and there is a rollover with interest. Right? Okay, that's their decision. So if you come to me as a government and I've issued a debt and you say rollover, it gives you some comfort. Because on due date, I'm not paying. But now mandatorily, we are deferring. So with due respect to our seniors, we are deferring. The debt exchange is not a solution. It's a relief.
It's not a solution.
It's a relief.
So we are pushing forward.
It's a relief for us to have a program, just like we took the 1 billion, World Bank loan at 10.2%, which was criticized, right? Mm-hmm. Because of this single span bonds and things that we had issued. And then we realized we cannot continue borrowing. So we rather negotiated with labor to spread the payment, but we'll be paying the current salary and spread the payment over a period of time to give us allowance. This is a relief. It's not. That's why I said, remember I said it's not HIPIC. It's not forgiveness. Much of it is going to be suspended. If we are lucky and the externals, forgive some, that will be bonanza. Mm-hmm. Right? But we are not an income country throughout the COVID. Remember they did that during the COVID. Mm-hmm. The suspension, which we refuse, to take. It's the same thing. It's the same committee we are meeting now. So I'm saying that with all due respect to Dr. Percy and we are deferring the problem. We are deferring the problem.
To be solved another day.
Yes, and by others.
And by others.
God willing, yeah.
No, okay, so let's assume former President Mahama walks into office 2025.
Yes.
You're saying that the problem that is currently will be inherited by him without the people who clearly...
Oh, definitely. But much of it, look at the...
doing anything
No, but look
it.
at the timetable for the debt exchange. Most of it is 2026, 2027. So we need to prepare for it. That's the reality.
But can the solution start now? Can't we insist that...
But there's no money in the coffers. You can't even honor the debt. That's why you are there. You are there restructuring. We are defaulting. And our ratings are bad. So, you can't even go and borrow to refinance because the markets have shut to us. I mean, that's the stark reality.
And at this stage, everything is now being affected. The food prices.
The only thing we are relying on now are two things. GRH revenue that is coming in, and to the extent possible, T-bills, which we are able to issue, which Ghanaians are still patronizing. One of the biggest things we have damaged and undermined, all the bonds we are talking about used to be housed in Bank of Ghana. And then when the due date come, we go to the market, and then through the banks, we get to know who wants to roll over, who wants to, so we're rolling. Then we put them on the stock exchange, which is what countries do, to make it liquid. You see, because if I'm the government and I am doing that, right, you are making the market what we call liquid or marketable. So let me be as practical as possible. Sena is holding a bond.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Sena is, you are holding a bond. You've asked your bank. So let's say you are holding a bond to the value of 1 million. You are 1 million. So 1 million dollars. Okay. So I'm wishing you, don't worry. Okay. So you have a bond of 1 million. Okay. Then you realize, oh no, maybe I'm keeping it for some projects, land, the registration and things. I want to start some building projects, but let me keep it and be earning some interest. So come due date, you come to the market. Previously, you would have come to government through your bank and say, I need my money, or please carry it over. Okay. Now we took that activity to the stock exchange. So when Sena needs the 1 million, somebody else, if assuming you need 500 of that 1 million, then somebody who also needs it. So without government, the stock market is exchanging, and giving government respite. But government must have the discipline to be paying down, because it's debt you can't be rolling over. Again, a sinking fund comes. The refinancing that we did. So that's how come pension funds that are being held, which if we are not careful, they will start, it's because of BUG rules, they will start investing them outside. In many countries, they are invested outside. Because there's little risk to it. But we're building the same market, to make the bonds liquid, and to allow government to time when they can take it off or whatever. So if government goes to the market and it says, okay, I have, let me say, I need new loans of 200, okay, and another 150 is due, that is 350. So I need to borrow 350 for my ongoing projects, which I have to finance at the deficit. And then I have people who are holding 150 or old bonds, right? Okay. Now, if I go to the market and I have a good rate because my performance is good, and I get the 200, and then we call it book building. They tell me that, oh, the 150, maybe you don't have to borrow, because in addition to the 200 people, there are people who need bonds to the value of 200, and the 150 is even not enough. So I can then say, okay, roll over, right, to give me some respite. Maybe the economy is soft at the time.
Okay.
So the market was enabling, government. That's how, that's how you develop. It's, but when you say deepening the domestic markets, this is simply what happens. So in 2015, we took all this activity to the stock exchange, and it was doing well.
But this will be painful for a lot of people.
Well, but we need to build the confidence as quickly as possible.
Because pensioners are already, because it's the first time you're seeing pensioners coming out to demonstrate.
Absolutely, because
several bondholders are unable to afford the basics.
Exactly, because they were going to their banks, they were going to the pension, funds and the rest, and they know that this market has come to stay. In fact, it became the largest, market in the Ghana Stock Exchange. The government fixed income, yes. Or other fixed income market became the largest between 2015, and now, barely a decade. So it is this which is being undermined, and it's losing confidence in the pension structure that President Kufuor put in place, the private pension, structure, yes, and the channel for financing the banks. It's risking even the banks, the percentage which the banks have to put a Bank of Ghana as liquidity buffer. So what we are talking about is deep. It has affected seriously a major structural reform, that was put in place.
Ultimately, how long do you think it will take for us to resolve all this?
Well, a good example, you remember the 50 Ghana cedi notes?
Yeah.
And how long it took to rebuild confidence in the banking sector?
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that one, it was a flat 50, right? Which was like the redenomination that was done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quite a while.
No, the point is that yes and no. If we come with discipline back to building the buffers and achieving results, because by the time we did the refinancing and the rest, it's not just the rate of borrowing that was going down. There are graphs, maybe we'll say we put it on the wall. The treasury bill rate and the other rates has started falling from about 22% to about 16 or so percent by the time we left office, which was brought down to about 3% or so. Then it started rising again on the back of what we're doing. So it was actually yielding results. So if we should come in, yes, and continue or restart many of these projects together with fiscal discipline, as I was talking, finish the giftness, do GRA domestic automation, because we did, the external one now ICOMS, West Blue, you remember, single window and all those, yeah. So if you bring all these things back in, GRA is able to bring in solid revenue, and then you begin to reduce, the tax burden. You got too many, too many levies and the rest. By the way, most of these levies existed already. The service taxes, they existed, and they were put into the VAT. They were being collected by IRS. When Professor Mills was commissioner, and Mr. Tuahoe, they put all of those things into the VAT. That is what VAT was. Today we are bringing them back. Duplication.
I know you are a numbers person mostly, but you're also a politician. How bad is our situation? For example, because you're just talking about Cocoa Board. It's in the red.
Yeah, and
sure if you go to GNPC, you'd have problems.
Yes.
If you go to GPHA, you have problems.
Yes, we will know all of those problems when the agreement is published. Because the fund has been talking about these are what we call the contingent liabilities. So we know whether the airport structure I was talking about was compromised.
Okay.
The airport company will be part of it and all that. And so our ability to borrow without guarantee, which we virtually achieved in 2015 and 2016. Because the major projects we didn't issue, sovereign guarantee because of this structure. We didn't. In fact, we issued one sovereign guarantee, two, all of them for the World Bank. The World Bank, bond, the counter, they guaranteed, so we had an implicit guarantee, right? And then the bonds that we did. But apart from that one, the only one was the partial risk guarantee that we did. For most of the other commercial projects, we didn't issue, guarantee.
Everything fits into the economy that you as a finance minister is looking at, because you are Minister for Finance and Economic Planning when you are in office. So
Minister for Finance, it changed to Minister of Finance during our tenure years.
Okay.
Remember, the planning was shifted to NDPC, but we were collaborating with them.
But basically, you know how you virtually have to know the financial situation
of
every sector.
Yeah, I follow them. I'm sure you've patronized some of our presentations.
Is there any sector which is left, which is in a good shape? Or that's impossible under the circumstances?
Private sector. I wouldn't even say that
I have spoken to the businessmen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They are all crying.
I had one of the news this morning. Yes. So, no, when the economy suffers, everything suffers. Remember, it's just that the effect of doom, so the disruption in gas supply from Nigeria, it was devastating. Because we experienced businesses were closing down because of power. They were rationing. They were buying generators and all those, before Ameri and others came in to resolve, just because we were told the West Africa gas pipeline will be fixed, and it continued, wasn't being fixed. Yes.
But those who look at it say this is no doom, so this is more than
what
you fix.
No, it's deeper. Obviously, we didn't take people's pension money. We did restructuring and everything.
Government
and then for the depositors, we don't take responsibility because we had ESLA, and you can Google. They themselves said there was enough money to take.
So we don't take blame for the banking, because they said you defer the problem that they inherited. We
deferred it to what it is what accounts for ESLA. I told you the structure, that the public sector debt, subsidy and the rest were fully covered by ESLA. The opposition were there. They were the ones who were telling us to go and quantify, because they were not going to give us, the free hand to impose levies, which will be unending. So we went back and quantified $2.2 billion. And it was calculated in Finance Committee to make sure that within the 3 to 5 years, we'll pay the debt.
The debts owed to the banks?
Indirectly, yes, through the public.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
which was a big one.
And those
yes. That was ESLA. The opposition was there. It took time to negotiate that.
And you had started paying them off?
We had started paying them off. So we don't take responsibility for it. And we wanted to take a gradualist approach because, we were also looking at the US, right? When they started making their banks collapse. Remember when it came to Bank of America and the rest, they came up with the expression, too big to fail.
Yeah.
Too big to fail doesn't mean that it is a structure that's big. It is the impact on the economy when those big banks go down. And it was experienced in the UK and others because 3 small banks went down. Recently, you know that 2 banks went down. You saw the speed with which the US government came in, Switzerland, right? I hope that people have been following this. Yeah. You remember the old Swiss bank, I forget it, it just escaped me. It was taken over by another one with the support of the government. Because we allowed banks to collapse. So we were taking a gradualist approach, and we were, telling the friend that we had done this, ESLA, the money was there to resolve at least, even if the public sector subsidy and every elements, was even, let's say, half, right? That's half of non-performing loans being taken off the books of the banks.
Because if you listen to those who worked at GN Bank at the time, they'll tell you majority of their liabilities was with government contracts.
I said we pay, yes, exactly. But that's what I'm telling you, that that's why we brought my colleague, Honorable Fuseni. Yeah, was the one who was doing the negotiation with them. So he brought them 1 billion. We actually, took the first 1 billion to pay to start paying the contractors. Okay. And we handed over, you know, and then we set a VRA, the IPPs was to follow. And we handed all of this over. So we don't take responsibility for it.
I was going to ask you about government's projection. By 2028, they said we should be having debt sustainability.
Well, what I read is 2037.
Oh, okay. Because I'm still saying 2028.
No, we'll be making progress. You know, definitely.
Make progress by that time.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But that will depend on what we do. Still.
That's the suspension I was talking about. So, yeah, we have to prepare for it. Well, we have to probably do more. You know, look at depending on the fortunes and things. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Honorable, I